Hi, welcome to the Tips and Tricks video series. I'm Andy Acker, Director of Education for North America.
And I'm Brian Bouchard, Regional Manager for the Northeast. You know, Andy, I get a lot of questions over the years about what type of trowel to use when setting tile.
Well, and the proper answer is the one that gets you the right coverage. If we look at the industry standards, the coverage basically means the area that makes contact between the tile and the substrate. So we're really counting on the thinset to be there to not only bond the tile, but to support it also.
Right. And you know, when I think about coverage, I always tell my customers, the coverage is really there. It acts like, you know, a foundation or support for tile. So the more coverage, the more support, the more long-lasting this tile installation will be.
So the industry standards also note that it's got to be 85% coverage with ceramic tile and 95% if it's a stone or a wet area. So why don't we shoot for 100% coverage and see what we get from that?
Yeah, and as you can see, we've got a lot of trowels in front of us, and really as a tile setter, you should have all these because there's no real set standard as far as, oh, I'm going to use this 1/4 by 1/2 with this tile. You really got to take the trowel and, you know, install that first piece of tile, lift it back up, and see if you are getting that 85 to 100% that you're talking about, Andy.
That's right, Brian. Well, we have a couple of trowels here that we offer at Schluter-Systems. We have the Dieter trowel and the Curdy trowel, both very small notches here to put our product in, to put our membranes in. Okay, we have several different tiles here up on the table, different sizes, but also different textures or finishes on the back, right?
Yeah, and really, as you can see, there's different types of manufacturing processes. So these are not flat, and this is why we recommend using the flat side of the trowel. So we're going to put thinset on the back of these tiles, and then use the flat side of the trowel to back butter, or flat trowel the back of the tile. Now that's giving us two things. One, we're making the tile flat with the wet thinset, and that's the same wet thinset that we've combed on the floor. And that's when we're going to set the tile down. So this is going to really help us get close to that 100% coverage that you're always asking for, Andy.
That's right. By the way, back buttering is not an industry requirement, but it is strongly recommended when you get to a larger format tile so that you make certain you get that bond. But I would go one step further than just saying large format tile. I'd say because of the texture on the back, the different configuration on the back, and you're showing another tile there that's completely smooth, it would still be a good practice on that tile there, which is a natural stone, to back butter anyway.
Right, even though you can see this is pretty much flat, it's still a good idea to back butter this because there's porosity in the back of the stone. So you're basically growing roots and legs of the thinset. So you're probably increasing bond by about 50% by back buttering, even on a flat stone like this.
Right, it's always a good idea. We use the term burn in the thinset in the back. We noticed when we were handling these earlier that we got some dust, maybe like some kiln release or some sort of dust off the back. So back buttering, again, scraping with the flat side of the trowel is going to make certain we really get a grab into that tile.
Right, because if we don't take care of this dust, basically we're setting the dust to our combed thinset.
And it could be a potential bond breaker between the thinset we combed just simply on the floor and the actual tile. So various sizes up here. We've got the most popular sizes tiles that are out here right now. Not only are they not flat because of the configuration on the back, but they might not be flat as far as in plane either. So that's another good reason. A lot of the plank size could have a concave to it and so forth, so that could come into play with hampering us with our coverage. So let's go ahead and talk about the techniques of putting the tile down and spreading and back buttering, and then we'll actually put some in. We can put some right on this Dieter on the table here.
Yeah, it's all about coverage, coverage, coverage.
That's right. We just certainly want to get the coverage because that's the important part here. As you stated earlier, it's not only bonding the tile to the floor, but it's supporting the tile under load when people walk on it. It's a funny thing, floor tile is walked on, so we're going to need to get that done. So as far as spreading, how would we go about just starting with the notch trowel? How do you select it? Is there a rule of thumb where we can generally get started based on the size of the tile?
Well, when you're looking at the tiles we have on here, Andy, I would generally start with this one, which is a 1/4 by 3/8 notch trowel. And it's
good starting point.
Yeah, it's not to say that's the end all, but that's a good starter. we'll flat trowel first to the substrate, and then we'll comb, back butter the back of the tile, put it in place, move it a couple times, and then we'll lift it to check coverage. Now, if I've got 85 to 100% coverage, then I'm happy. I'll continue with the installation. If I have less than that, then I'll probably bump up to a bigger notch trowel.
Okay, so let's prepare a place here so we can set some tile. So you grab what you're going to need there, Brian. I'll get the rest of the stuff out of the way. And I think out of all the tile we have, the most popular tile sizes on the market right now are the plank like this, but also are the 12 by 24. So why don't we go ahead and set a couple of those down here. So you can see the back of these very similar to the 12 by 12 there. So, and we'll just set a couple right here in spot. So what are we going to do here first, Brian? You want to show some improper technique?
Yeah, the first tile I'm going to install, I'll use a 1/4 by 1/4 notch trowel.
Okay.
I won't back butter. So basically I'm going to apply the thinset to the membrane. And come back with the notch side of the trowel. Just want to make sure I'm covering the whole area here. These are pretty big tiles, Andy.
Yes, they are.
And now I'll do the notch. And after this, we'll set the second one doing the method we described earlier.
Okay. So many times we don't see proper troweling where all the trowel marks are in parallel like this. Typically we see, yeah, swirling pattern and that type of thing, and of course that's not the right way to trowel here with tile. But we'll put this tile in here.
They're pretty heavy.
It's a pretty good sized tile. And it is pretty heavy, and it might not be totally flat. Actually, the manufacturers are allowed a certain amount of tolerance here as far as how flat this tile is. So typically they have a little bit of a concave to them. So there's just setting it in, and then you didn't work it in. I see a lot of setters on the job site. All they do is just set it in and then they push a little bit, maybe even a little bit like that, and that's about all they're doing. So now proper technique, you've switched over to no, you haven't yet. You're still using that trowel to burn into the
You're right.
into the substrate.
Good catch,
here.
Andy.
Well, we see
You'd
that
make
quite
a good
often.
boss
right?
on a job.
I could be a boss, couldn't I? All right, so
I will switch.
We want to key that in to make certain the cavities are all filled up, and now we're going to go to
The 1/4 by 3/8.
1/4 by 3/8. Let's see what kind of coverage we get with that particular one. So now proper troweling technique is to put all the lines in the same direction. And the reason we do that is so we have the ridges standing proud right now, but then once we set the tile in place after it's back buttered, you'll see how Bryant works the tile into those ridges to have them collapse into each other. So that's what's going to ensure our coverage, not only the back buttering, but the actual proper bedding technique of the tile itself.
I want to mention this too, Andy. I'm holding the trowel at 45-degree angle, and that's ensuring that all the ridges stay at the same height as I move across.
That's right. You don't want to lay that trowel over too much because it becomes less and less of a tall notch when you do that. And as you said earlier, this is what the back of the trowel is for, right? You have a side that has the notches, which gauge how much thinset we're going to leave on the floor, and we have a flat side of a trowel. Manufacturer did that so that you can actually do this process here. So it's really, it just depends on the nature of the tile, but it isn't really important to build up a lot of thinset on the back of the tile, but just burn some in. Now, since this is a rectangular sized tile and the manufacturer's allowed some tolerances out of flatness as far as the tile itself, they don't recommend that you do a 50% break on the joints here for running bond, because that will have this tile's lowest point next to this tile's highest point. So they're recommending probably about like a 30% coverage on there. So now you set this one in, and then I noticed as you put that in, you did work that back and forth. You actually moved it back and forth, and you can see since we're going across the ridges back and forth, that's going to knock them down.
It basically rolls the notches right over, And every time we do that, we find we're getting really close to the 100% that you want.
That's right. We're setting the tile. We're tile setters, and that's important that we're not just setting them in the thin set, we're actually working them into the bond coat. All right.
Why don't we take a look at the coverage?
Let's go see what we've got here. So first, the one with the swirls and the quarter by quarter, no back buttering. Can we even get the thing up? All right. What do we got? Well, you know, there's a machine that actually takes a picture of this and then reverse negatives, black to white, white to black, and it'll tell us exactly what coverage we have on there. And I don't think, from looking at it, that we have 85% coverage on that, which would be the minimum for a ceramic tile in a dry area.
So again, as we're talking about coverage and support for the tile, we're not even close. And if we're moving something heavy like a refrigerator or any type of cart, this might crack.
Yeah, and you can see the swirl patterns here where we weren't able to work the tile across the ridges and have them collapse into each other. Now let's take a look at the better coverage here.
Let's hope it's better coverage, Andy.
We're going to hope it's better coverage. But, you know, this is good. This is the technique you should be using on the job site, is once you put a couple of tile in, lift to make certain you're getting the coverage that you need. Oh, look at there. That looks like just about 99.8%, wouldn't you say? I'm giving you just a little bit of leeway there.
If we were on a job, Andy, you'd say that's the right trowel.
That is the proper notch trowel. Another way that you can tell is when you set the tile in and you start working it in. If you hear that gritty grinding of the sand, you know you probably don't have the right trowel. You should probably go up a notch size there too. Well, there you go. So improper coverage, you can see you really didn't get the minimum coverage that we want here. Here we got, I would say, close to 100% on this particular tile. So thanks for joining us here. We hope these tips help you out the next time you set tile and you can achieve good coverage.
And please visit our website, schluter.com, and check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to it to see more videos just like this and these.